Welcome to Her Own Boss, the podcast created by recent graduates to help you find your inner entrepreneur. Her Own Boss is created by Anissa, Ben, Sarah, Megan, Lucy, and me, Nikki. Today I'm talking to Hannah Awonuga about a really hot topic which impacts us all. Hannah will be teaching us about microaggressions, what they are, how to respond if you experience or witness one, and importantly, what to do if you get called out. Hannah is an experienced leader in corporate diversity and inclusion and is also a certified career coach. In addition to her day job, Hannah is founder of Rarity London, a career services company focusing specifically on young female professionals. I learned so much from recording this episode with Hannah, and I hope you do too. Don't forget you can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Her Own Boss Podcast. This episode is sponsored both by Rise, created by Barclays, and Barclays Eagle Labs. Rise is a global community of the world's top fintech innovators on a mission to connect technology, talent, and trends, and to accelerate innovation and growth in the financial services industry. Eagle Labs are a national network that supports individuals, businesses, and corporates innovate and grow across a broad range of different sectors and with varied capabilities. Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Really, really good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Really excited about this episode on microaggressions. But before we kind of jump into it, do you want to give a really quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Hannah Awonuga. I'm a Global Diversity and Inclusion Manager within the Group D&I team. Also the founder of Rarity London Career Coaching Service, which is a service to support females in their career development.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're going to be the perfect person to speak to about this topic, I think. And to kind of set the scene and get started, could you help us define what a microaggression is?
Yeah, absolutely. So microaggressions have been around actually for a long time. And when we get into it, I'm sure there'll be loads of people that will be able to identify it. But the actual term, when I looked it up, the definition is the subtle, intentional or non-intentional comments or phrases that can be perceived or received in a negative way. And that's really interesting because actually the perceived and received shows that it may not be coming from a negative place, but can be received as a negative comment. And so that's what we're going to get into today, because I think that's where, a lot of colleagues and people listening would really like to kind of understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that point about how it's received or perceived by other people is what makes it a microaggression. Because I think for me personally, the big one that I get, so I'm mixed race. My mum is white Australian and my dad is Malaysian. So my full given name is a bit unusual. And one I get a lot is people will ask, oh, like, where are you from? And I'll give my answer. And people will then look at me funny as if I've answered the question incorrectly and then ask, oh no, but where are you really from? And that's obviously, it's just a question. It's not making any assumptions about me. No one said anything bad, but it's saying like, oh no, but you're too foreign to say that you're just from Australia. So where are you actually from? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I get a lot that, oh, Hannah, you're so articulate. And I almost have to stop for a second, like, yes,
What do you
and exactly. And that for me, when I hear that comment, it's quite a common comment that a lot of people from ethnic minorities receive. It's almost saying that it's surprising that you're so articulate, right? Because you're a Black woman. And so there's the microaggression, because actually it should be a compliment, and if they said, oh, you delivered that presentation really well, Hannah, or I really like that point that you made about XXX, that's a different comment. But when you are meriting somebody on the way they speak, that is where the microaggression lies.
Definitely. And even one that we mentioned when we were chatting earlier, that is kind of neutral and it's more an action than a verbal comment. But, people will come back from their holiday and then stick their arm up next to you and be like, oh, I'm as dark as you are. Like,
yeah. It just makes me laugh, and again, these are the things, and this is why with microaggressions it's really important to have the understanding and the context, because I've had it a number of times where it's kind of a laugh and a joke, and I'm nearly as dark as you. And actually, my color is not a fashion accessory, right? It's my identity. So that is where the microaggression comes, because almost saying, oh, we want to be, we want to be like your skin color, but I can't change my skin color. You know, there's really thin lines with it, but it's really important that we have these conversations, because, you know, that is the only way we're going to make a better society. So it's really great to be here talking about this.
Yeah, it's good. And I think it's so useful because as we were kind of planning this Minisode topic, we all kind of started thinking about the different microaggressions we had received, and then potentially even ones that we had delivered without meaning to. So this is where it would be really good to kind of talk about, if you're on the receiving end of a microaggression, how can you respond?
So I think it's an interesting one, and there's different levels to it, right? So I've spoken a lot recently about our junior professionals and how they may not be in the position to be able to call it out, whether you do it there and then and say, actually, that's not funny, you know, or, you know, I don't find that appropriate. Once you do that, that immediate feedback allows the person to know that actually what they said was received in a negative way. But not everybody is in a position to do that. And if you're just starting your career and your boss says something, are you really going to call it out? You know, are you really going to be able to call it out? And the answer is probably no. So therefore, for me, it would be about creating a safe environment that allows you to call it out and address it. And whether that means taking that manager to the side, bringing it up at the next possible occasion, and just subtly saying, oh, do you know what, this made me feel a certain way. And it's really important, you know, as people from a minority, Black people, ethnic minority people, disabilities, you know, everyone who could be on the receiving end of a microaggression, it's important that we call it out in the right way. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you've got that safe environment where you can do so.
Yeah, definitely. I think making sure that you feel safe if you're on the receiving end is so important. And it's something that we've kind of spoken about in other episodes before, where people have received a microaggression, whether it's because of, you know, their race, or the fact that they're a woman, or because they're a young woman. And in the moment, it can be really daunting. And sometimes you're also in shock that, you know, someone's even said something like that to you, because they act so blasé because they didn't mean for it to be offensive, but it obviously is for you.
Exactly. And you know what? It's interesting because we're talking about it in a context of race, but it can be on anything. So you could say, you know, you could be a young person and you're speaking to your senior manager and you say to them, well, do you know what Facebook is? Or do you have a Facebook? Do you know what Instagram is? And actually that is a microaggression, because what you're saying is, because you look old, you may not know what technology is or what social media is. And so it's important to say that it's not only about race, but it's about looking at people with difference and making sure that you're not prejudging.
Yeah, definitely. You're so right. There's so many different kind of contexts and intersections where people might be on the receiving end of a microaggression.
Yeah.
And so I guess with that in mind, kind of understanding more about what a microaggression is and how to recognize it from different points of view. If you're a bystander, should you speak up if you're kind of not involved? You've just seen it happen, heard it happen. And if you should, what should you say?
Yeah, really, really good question. And when I was thinking about this question earlier, my first thought was this whole new notion of not being racist and being anti-racist, right? So not being racist is you get on with people. You haven't got a problem with people with difference. You know, you're a law-abiding citizen and you get on with everybody, right? But being anti-racist is actively working against racism. And so obviously I'm talking about microaggression in the term of race, but it could be for anything, ageism, gender. If you are a bystander and you see something like that happening, it's up to you to make the decision to whether you want to be a bystander or if you actively want to be anti-racist, if that was the case, right? So, and how do you do that? So there's two elements to me there. If you are a bystander and you see something like that happening, or you hear something that just doesn't sit right with you, again, create the safe space. But if it means that you just go up to that person and say, do you know what you said to you know, one of the colleagues there just didn't sit right with me, it could have been perceived this way, you're teaching somebody something new, or making them aware of something that they may not be aware of. But then you have an onus as well to go to that person that received that microaggression and let them know that you have been able to call it out, because that gives that person the confidence to also be able to say, do you know what, you're right, I'm going to say something because that wasn't cool. So I think there's two things that you can do there from a bystander's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that as a bystander, obviously calling it out is so important, whether you do it kind of in the moment or you wait until it's kind of more appropriate or you feel safer to do so.
Yeah.
Do you speak to that person who was on the receiving end and just check in and be like, are you okay with what was said?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was saying. I think that it's really important that you do that, because what you're doing is creating safety for that person to do it, to call it out the next time. Maybe they were just going to leave it because they're used to it now. But now that you've said to them that, look, I saw that as well and that wasn't cool, they then feel a little bit more confident to be able to raise it the next time.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess a kind of final question is, if you're the person who's been called out, how should you react?
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me when I think about that, because it's not always coming from a bad place. And so this is the point. This is where education really comes into it, and really understanding, learning. We're all in a learning journey at the moment. The Black Lives Matter movement, you've got COVID, you've got George Floyd. Everything that's happened in 2020 has forced us all to learn.
Yeah.
And so I would say that if you are a person who, when you do your learning, you think, oh my God, I've said that before. Like, I don't mean to say that. It's never too late, right? It's never too late to put things right. It's never too late to correct yourself. And you are in a learning phase. So if you feel the need to go and approach something that you've had them type of comments before, just approach it from a place of, I'm learning, and this is what I've learned, and when I've learned this has made me feel that I've done this in a different way, and I want to be better.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And to kind of loop back to what we said at the beginning, that microaggression is not necessarily intentional. Whether you mean it or not, someone has perceived that negatively. And so if you've been called out, whether it's by the person or by a bystander, just kind of not being on the defensive, because sometimes it can be really easy to be like, oh no, I didn't mean it. We know that you didn't mean it, but the point is it's negatively affected someone. So, you should apologize, or you should think about, what were your intentions in saying that, and how going forward can you maybe get your message across better.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, it's just about framing.
Yeah, exactly. It is all about kind of intent and what your meaning actually is. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I've definitely learned a lot, and I hope it does help other people who are kind of on their learning journey, or who have kind of been on the receiving end of microaggressions before as well, and really take that step to kind of start calling people out in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate that we are all learning at this stage. It's really important to understand that. So, show your vulnerability, be able to speak up. Everybody needs to be able to contribute to making our society better. I always go into Greenpeace mode, right? To make our society better. We all have a part to play.
Awesome. Thank you.
No worries. It's a great conversation.
Thanks for listening. If you found this Minisode useful, then let us know by leaving a review. And as always, you can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Her Own Boss Podcast.